Next, we have Jody Damron. He's the Operations and Maintenance Supervisor and Maximo Lead for the Salt River Project. He's been working for SRP for over 42 years. In '89, Jody transferred from the control room operator into an instrumentation and controls training program and has since implemented many levels of instrumentation and control data to CMMS and calibration systems. He built and supervised a hands-on instrument controls and electrical training program, and he served in several roles. There's too many supervisors. I have a list, and it's like a bucket full of supervisors, and I apologize for not saying them all. But one of them is even CMMS upgrade supervisor and ending with business analyst and planning and scheduling supervisor. Jody, you have so much experience, and we are looking forward to hearing you today. Welcome.
I'm going to be talking about building calibration asset data compatible with CMMS, and in our instance, it's Maximo, and a calibration software which we use Beamex. So we've learned, as we've gone through these transitions. I've been involved since I started with the company 43 years ago. I've been involved in this process, and we've done many good things that has helped a lot of people. And I'm going to be discussing those throughout my presentation. These are some of the roles that I've had. I'm not going to go over all of them, but each one of those has helped me learn some unique skills for migrating data, for building data. Ultimately, Maximo asset management data and calibration data. So we've done this at quite a few of the plants. Right now, we're doing this process at our hydro sites, and I'll be talking a little bit about that later on. So this is Navajo Generating Station. This site was actually taken down last year. It was one of the big coal-fired sites. But when I hired on in 1978, Bechtel had built this plant. I didn't know it at the time, but Bechtel did a fantastic job documenting the instrumentation, the drawings, how everything linked together. But we didn't have any type of electronic format at that time. So we had paper cards, paper spreadsheets of our calibration information. And we showed our calibration data on 3x5 cards, and I'll show you this in just a little bit. I wanted to show you this slide because it came up interesting enough this last weekend when we were working with our hydro site. And one of the instrument techs mentioned that the operations personnel for their sites are looking forward to being able to access the drawings in an easier manner than what they have today. As all of you may know, if you've ever tried to find drawings, they're difficult to find in a lot of cases. When you get guys out in the field, they don't have the prints readily available to them. So this was me giving John McCain a tour of the control room at Navajo Generating Station. And one of my biggest headaches as a control room operator was it never failed on night shift. We would have a failure. And I remember one time where the unit I was on had a unit trip because it had a shorted wire. And from the inside of the control room, I didn't have any indication of what had happened, except for an alarm because of the shorted wire. So I called my electricians, I called my instrument tech. We only had one of each on shift. We were reviewing what I saw in the control room of what the problem was. They went down and they started troubleshooting. So they had sticks and sticks of documentation, paper prints, and they went through all of those, our whole shift onto the next shift. When I came on the next day, they were in the same place when I left. They couldn't find the problem. They had a hard time finding the drawings to start with. One of the things that I've always been really interested in is how do we get the prints, the documentation, the manuals to the hands of the guys in the field in a timely manner when you have an emergency. So by the end of my presentation this morning, I'm going to show you how we have been successful in doing that. And in my case alone, it had saved millions of dollars just in one instance, one little problem that we had at Navajo Generating Station. Instead of that day and a half of trying to find the needle in the haystack, we were able to find all the drawings within a matter of minutes. So I'm going to be showing you that as I get through with my presentation. So this is what I started with at Navajo Generating Station. We had 5x7 cards. The calibration information was on these cards. And then when we did calibrations, we would have to come in and put our name and date and the as found and as left of the calibration. Then we put them in these card files. This book here was what Bechtel left us. That was all of our calibration. Like I say, it was not in a calibration form, a electronic form. Some of the challenges that we had, we didn't have any security. And more than one time, that one of the guys misplaced one of the cards. We had lost data. We had no reporting. We had lost megawatts, and we didn't have an audit trail. I was the instrument tech assigned to our state certified person that came in and did audits on our calibrations for boiler pressure. And he would come in and I had to give him a tour and we'd have to pull up these cards. He would come unannounced because it was an audit. So I'd bring him up here, we'd pull these cards. Well, there was one day where one of the technicians had misplaced the card. It was back in the very back of the card file. Well, we couldn't find it, so we got written up. Didn't go over good. We had to write a big report. So we ended up building a system that I'm going to show you in just a little bit, where the engineer, all he had to do was click one button, run the report, give it to the state certified auditor. And after 2 months of him coming in and doing that, he told us, he says, you know what, just run the report, give it to me. And with you guys, I'm good because I know you guys are doing the calibrations because everything is on this report. Everything I want is on the report. That was very agonizing when we had these 3x5 cards. So we've come a long way. This is, kind of at the start of the plant when they built it in the 70s. But what I wanted to show everybody is Bechtel did a fantastic job of identifying the instrumentation, providing us a system that was very easy to upgrade because the structure of the data was some of the best that I've ever seen. And I didn't realize how good it really was until I had the opportunity to work at a lot of different sites. But the data structure of what they left us was amazing. They did a great job. So this is some hydro sites, and we're right in the middle of doing a data management instrument upgrade for these guys right now. You can see from some of these pictures that this is not a young, or this is an old site. These dams are old. They've been there for a while. 2011 is when they gave that little presentation. I believe that's Theodore Roosevelt. But we're in the process right now. The technicians are going out in the field. They are going to every instrument. They're documenting everything. They're pulling all of their documentation together. And we've built a really high quality database spreadsheet where they are validating every single point. They are documenting the drawings for every point. That includes the instrument, so the transmitter, the switch, whatever it may be. And it includes the DCS information, the wiring, terminals, control and hardware and software points. It includes all of that in this spreadsheet. And then I'll show you this in a little bit, but we've transferred that spreadsheet into Maximo in some screens that we have built. By using that information that we have gathered over the years to be critical information, the guys in the field can now easily find all the drawings, calibration information, manuals, everything that we have in our electronic data management system. This is just an example of a spreadsheet. This is one that we built for this hydro site. It's got a lot going on, a lot of colors, a lot of different settings. And the reason why I wanted to show you this one is because all of these different instruments were in yellow. We actually loaded into Maximo as a new asset as recently as last week. And so once we had the asset in Maximo, we went in and configured the calibrations and configured Beamex. We have a system at Salt River that we've configured by working with a lot of what I consider very intelligent guys on our side and the Beamex side to build a system that fully integrates from Maximo to Beamex and then back to Maximo. And I'll show you a little bit of what that looks like, how we use it, and the benefits that it gives us. So to pull off a project like this, it takes a lot of different organizational points. You got to have the right scope. Many of the people that have done these projects before, they'll tell you that the success rate is not as high as what you may think it would be. There's a lot of problems that people run into. They get frustrated. I've seen it in projects that I have been involved with, even where guys in the field will get frustrated. They get burnout. They get discouraged because they don't think it's possible that you're ever going to get to the end of the road with this thing. But so it's very important to have the right scope when you start the project. You got to know where you're going to end up at. Having the right people is, I can't stress enough how important this is. You know, in our case with this project that we're doing now with hydro, we have a great management team that without them, we wouldn't be doing the project to start with. They recognize the importance of having a calibration system, and even more so, a calibration system that integrates with our asset management. The other part of that is we have some of the best technicians that I've ever worked with, and you don't have to be super talented as far as the best technical person to really have a successful project with this. You got to have the right attitude because you learn a lot during one of these projects. And the guys that we're working with, they just have a great attitude. I mean, everything that we ask them to do, they go out and do it. They get it done before we meet again, and it's been a great working experience. It really has been one of the best projects that I've had the opportunity to work on. So I really appreciate their attitudes and their willingness to work hard. Another thing that's important is the management team just recognizing that it takes a lot of effort to get this done and support it. You know, it takes, the guys don't mind working. We don't mind supporting it, but we just have to, everybody has to be on the same page. We meet often, sometimes every other day. Sometimes we meet every day with the technicians. We also brought in a retired technician that worked for me when I was at NGS as the instrument supervisor. And so we brought him out of retirement, and he's helping us with some of the Beamex stuff. Realistic timelines, it's incredible and important to have realistic timelines because, you know, you're not going to do this overnight. This is extremely hard. This is not easy work, and a lot of people, they do get discouraged and they get burnt out. So it's important to understand what your timelines are to get the work done. At the end of the day, building quality data is our goal. That is the goal that we want. I tell guys all the time, when I retire and some of these other guys retire, we want to leave a system that will actually be used for years to come, and they will understand it. They'll be able to continue to use it and build on it. So that's been one of our goals as we go through these projects. And then have a process. You know, we've built a process where we build new assets. We have a process for that. How to build the calibration. What do we do with new calibrations or a calibration that needs to change? We have a work management and an asset management. We have a lot of governance processes. Like I say, whenever we need to do something in our system, it has to go to different business areas, and it has to get approved. All of this, it does sound like quite a bit, but I have seen the return on investment many, many times. It does take a lot of effort, but you do get a lot in return. So these are pretty simple slides, and I could go into a lot more detail, maybe in a future date where we could do a deeper dive into this, but I'll just run through how our Maximo system and Beamex system is configured. This tab here, this INC tab, that's one that we built. That's for our instrument and controls. This number, this 402105, that's the asset number that's generated from Maximo. That's just normal way Maximo works. There's the description. The reason is it's yellow is we've identified down here that it's a trip circuit. When we know it's a trip circuit, we know that it trips something, then we're going to just put this to a Y, and it's going to put this yellow background on it. That's the background that we have used for trip circuits. That's the placard that was used by Bechtel that we just continued using. Fire, if it's a fire circuit, we will put a Y here, and this little background here will turn red with white letters. There's a couple different things on this page. When it's a calibration instrument, we check this box when we get through configuring it. When we check that box and we have an active asset, we do that the very last, because when we do that, it automatically triggers an integration with Beamex. It will go over to Beamex and it will find this unit right here, and it will start building this smart ID. This tells you your unit, your system, your instrument type, your instrument number. So in this case, your unit is H4, and then the system is inlet dis. It says that it's a pressure transmitter. And this right here, if you clicked on that, it is loaded off of the standard ISA instrument types. So we didn't come up with anything on our own. That's all ISA. And then the instrument number. This, what we call the SRP ID, is unique throughout the entire system. This asset number may not be unique. You could have another asset number at another site with the same number, but you won't have an SRP ID. One, I will let you know that we're in the process of working with IBM and going to be going live with Maximo Mobile, where the guys will be able to go out and scan a QR code and be able to write service requests, be able to look up work orders, be able to look up drawings, be able to get all of this information on their phone or their iPad through a QR code. So we're in the process, the sites are in the process of installing CAM code tags that has this number encapsulated in. All of our asset information is included in this. We start building our Beamex information. Now we go to the next screen and we start pulling in. And when I was instrument tech, and then I was asked to be on the DCS team, and we literally upgraded all of our controls at NGS with Foxborough DCS. So when we did that, we learned a lot, tremendous amount about everything at the plant. But you also capture drawings, hundreds of thousands of drawings. What we did is we built fields in Maximo where we could capture ECS information and instrument information that made sense to the guys in the field. So I'll run through this real quick. So this particular one is a 0 to 500 psi with a 4 to 20 milliamp. And then it's written out here and here. And then there's some information down here. This information right here will be part of the integration to Beamex. So when this gets integrated over to there, this information goes with it. That will help. There's a couple fields in Beamex that we need to configure, and this helps us do that. I talked a little bit about DCS. So this gives the guys the processor ID, what type of card it is, signal range, it's PSIG. It gives them an indication of where the coordinates is, and it'll give them computer ID, and it'll give them software and hardware addresses. And we want to build this information off of that SRPID system that is unique. That will be what's on that CAM code, QR code that they will be just being able to scan in the field. So all this information will become available to them then. So here's more of the hardware address. So that gives you your cabinet, gives you your hardware address of your ID, gives you your point number. So this happens to be point 1. This one gives you your wire numbers. There's 3 wires, and these wire numbers will be located on the wire itself. So when the guy's out in the field, he scans that QR code, he can get this on his phone. So here's the part that I really want to hope that everybody on this call has a goal to end up with some type of link, a smart link, where knowing information from what a journeyman or an engineer knows in the field, he could get to these drawings. So this is what we've built. And right now we've got 2 instrument techs that are putting in all of these drawings off of DCS prints and any other print information that they have saved. So the way this works is you have the asset number there, you have that unique identifier up here. With knowing that, and this is on that CAM code QR code, you can get to this drawing tab, and it's going to have all of these drawings on it. If you just hit this pull down on any one of those drawings and then hit this little link here, it's going to get you to an SRP drawing similar to this one here. Now, that's really easy. You go out in the field, you scan a QR code, you got this drawing on your iPad within 2 seconds or less. That is unbelievable compared to what I had to go through when I was an instrument tech. We spent sometimes a whole shift doing this or more. So, and they're continuing to add on this. All they have to do is come in here. There's a little button down here that says new row. They add the print, and it automatically loads into our document management system, builds this link for them. So this system works like a champ. So this is what it's doing. When it goes over to Beamex, it automatically, if the unit's not there, it will build it for you. If the system is not there, if it's the first point, it will build it for you. And then it will come down here and it will build your instrument number. And then you have your point. We have to go in and off of this information, just set a couple parameters in here. But then it's built. Now this in Maxwell is called a route. And one of my guys that work for me is actually in scheduling, but he's worked with me for many, many years. He went in this last weekend, and the points that we did for hydro, he built the entire route, generated it through the PM generator, and they went out and calibrated all of those instruments in one day. And I'll go through the process with you of how that works. So those routes are generated in Maximo. So this is the criteria that we have to meet in Maximo. You got to have a cal work type on the asset. You got to have that checkbox. You have to have an INC asset. You got to have it in progress. That automatically gets sent to Beamex. And the guys can take that. They get a complete route and they can download that into their MC6. And then they go out into the field, calibrate just like they would a normal Beamex calibration. This is where we get return on investment. So when they go back to the shop and they download their calibrations into CMMS, all the calibrations that passed automatically get sent to Maximo. It goes to the work order that was built off of that route. It enters a log that says calibrated via the CMMS process or the Beamex process. It gives the logged on user ID and it says passed. That log becomes a permanent record because it is automatically saved. And the technician never has to touch Maximo. So,
whoa. You said the technician never has to touch Maximo. I would expect you to be getting a lot of complaints because technicians like to go into Maximo, don't they?
Oh, they love it. They love it. Yeah, that's.
And it's not just Maximo, any maintenance management system.
Any maintenance management system, yeah. Up at NGS, during a major overhaul, we did about 2,000 calibrations. And we used to have to go back and enter as found, as left information. And when we implemented this, Beamex is our system of record for the calibration. If we want to know what the calibration was, we go to Beamex because it's an actual calibration. Nobody can argue that point. But Maximo is the asset system of record. So if you want to know, all right, it was generated, it was calibrated, everything's got the name on it, it's got the date on it, then Maximo is your record to go to. But I've had to go back to Beamex and prove calibrations before. And it is very easy. Just print it off, take it to whoever you're having the conversation with and say, well, here's our results from the calibration. Our calibration is not the problem. This system works flawlessly as soon as we get the data all lined up. You got to have the data, everything's got to be right with the data. But we're in the process of doing this with hydro. We just finished one unit at one dam, and this weekend I've got 4 guys that are going to be doing 2 other units that has an outage coming up. And we validated this whole entire process yesterday when they went out and did the calibrations. It worked flawlessly. Questions? If we have any time.
One thing I'd like to mention is that in the beginning of this, you had really commended Bechtel for outstanding documentation of when that site was built. I think you were talking, was it the Navajo generation?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was in the
70s.
70s. And of course, it was on paper because electronic didn't exist yet. But you could still have outstanding documentation on paper, but you have figured out a better way, and now you have an electronic setup.
Yes. So when we converted what we had. First, we went into a spreadsheet, and then we went into Access, kind of followed technology along,
Sure.
and then we loaded it into Beamex. We actually sent it to Beamex, and you guys loaded it for us. And we did a standalone Beamex calibration for about 3 years until we built this Maximo integration. That took a few years to get that built.
Did it? Okay.
But yeah, the thing about Bechtel is their data was very clean. They just did a good job with the data.
It's always great to hear.
Yeah.
So there's a question here. I'm not exactly. Oh, okay, so here's a question from Antonio. What will happen if one of your calibrations fails?
Okay, good question. So,
and from the perspective of that last slide.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got two things that happen. It passes or it fails. If it fails, it goes back to Maximo and it makes a log that it failed, but it doesn't complete the work order. It just gives you a failed calibration. The instrument tech will have to go into that. He already knows that it failed. He was there. And he may have to do a follow-up work order. Let's say that he has to replace the transmitter.
Okay.
But yeah, it just doesn't complete the work order. It gives it a log that failed.
Okay. So Maximo still shows that it's open. And what's the trigger then to notify Maximo that it can close it?
So that's a manual process. The technician will have to go write a follow-up to whatever the problem happens to be. And then they will have to do another calibration work order.
Okay.
Which at that time, you would hope that everything's going to pass.
Sure.
And if it's, when you're out in the field, you're always, you're going to find a failed calibration and you're going to correct it right then. So a lot of them, unless you have a failed instrument, are going to be corrected when you calibrate it. But there are times when, the transmitter fails and has to be replaced. And on the asset management side, we want to track that because it's not a calibration. It's more than a calibration. It's a failure.
Got it. Here's a question. In the paper system, the tech generated a graphical error chart as found as left. Does this system produce an equivalent?
Yes. So on the Beamex side, it actually will give you a really nice, it's like a trend chart, but it actually tracks your calibration. You'll have your first pass, and if it doesn't pass, you do another one after you make some adjustments. And so you will have your true as found and as left, but it takes any guesswork away from it. And I've had to take these calibration sheets to the plant manager's office before because somebody thought our calibrations were wrong. And I was able to show them that's not the case. I can show you The guy calibrated it. Here was as left. He calibrated it, passed. So the instrument is not the problem. The calibration is not the problem.
It's always great
So
to prove your point with data.
Yeah, and it's way more than just as found and as left, where you're leaving it up to technician and question from people. Well, how do you know the technician wrote it right, or how do you know, it's just manual? All
Right.
valid questions.
I
But
think
with
we have time
this,
for one more. Sorry to interrupt.
okay, I just said with this, there is no question. I mean, it's on black and white, nothing to argue about.
Great. Can we enter our calibration result manually?
Yes, you can. We actually even there's certain instruments that you can't calibrate. You do a functional check, and those particular are manual, where
Okay.
you're functionally checking, let's say, a level switch. So sometimes you have to kind of back it out to what makes sense and do a functional check, but you're recording it.
Okay. Jody, it turns out we have a little bit more time than I was anticipating. So a couple more questions.
Sure.
All right. This was excellent. Thank you. In the drawings tab that was set up, is there an ability to link to Maximo to SPI for the instrument data sheet or only to a PDF document?
So anything that you put in our system, they call it ECM. It's our drawing document system. Anything that you can put in there, you can link to. It could be a manual, could be any type of drawing. But if it's in there and has a drawing number or a number, we can link to it. So
Okay.
you could have about anything that you could imagine.
And just to clarify from a software perspective, you can link an intranet inside your VPN or inside your network. You can link an internet link, which would be outside of your work network, or an actual file on a server, UNC, and it uses Windows File Association. So if you're linking to an AutoCAD drawing, for example, it'll grab the drawing, it'll fire up AutoCAD because that's the file association, and let you view it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that because I'm not a drafter, but
Well, from a CMX perspective, that's a true statement.
Okay, yeah,
I should have clarified.
That's good.
All right, I think that is it. Jody, I want to thank you for your time.
Okay.
This was an excellent presentation, and we appreciate your knowledge and wisdom on the topic.